Hello, welcome to the Inland Coalition on Aging Livestream. And today we're going to be speaking with Ben Haggerty and Carmen Estrada about our recent conference. Here we all are. So Ben and Carmen, who are from the board of the Inland Coalition on Aging, recently had the opportunity to present at the ICA conference, the Inland Empire Master Plan for Aging on the Road to Aging Well. And that happened this Friday. So we're going to talk a little about it and reflect on some of the events that occurred. So first, Carmen, tell us a little about the Inland Coalition on Aging Conference and its purpose.
So this is the second annual conference that we've held. Last year was the first. And so the Inland Coalition on Aging put on this conference to inform the community of our Inland Empire Master Plan for Aging. So last year we had a launch event where we informed stakeholders, professionals about how we are coming together, both Riverside and San Bernardino counties, to put together and develop an Inland Empire Master Plan for Aging. So last year we gave out the launch, and this year we wanted to share the framework. So how far we've come along in the project. We're developing the plan, with community input. And so the conference on Friday focused on giving that update so that we can get more feedback from the community on this plan that we hope to finalize by June 30th of 2025.
Nice. And so, Ben, maybe you can share a little bit about what is new for this conference. Specifically, this year we integrated more of a disability lens. So maybe you can tell us about why that's important.
Sure, absolutely. So as you know, the Inland Coalition on Aging, our efforts are to improve long-term services and supports to ensure that our populations of focus, which include older adults, adults with disabilities, and caregivers, can age well in the Inland Empire. So that means that we have to ensure that we're including stakeholder input into everything that we do. So this last year, we had a little bit of a focus on the disability community. So we had some stakeholder input from the disability community. And also the conference did feature a guest speaker, Andy Imparato, who is the executive director of Disability Rights Californians. And so he's a subject matter expert in this topic. He has been a leader at the national level, leading organizations, nationally advocacy efforts, very involved in disability policy. And so to have him as one of the guest speakers this year was phenomenal. And he brought some great input. And it was nice to see of course, disability community organizations, nonprofit organizations that serve older adults, people with disabilities at the conference to continue providing input into the Master Plan for Aging. So their unique perspective was shared by Andy. And one of the things he reminded us is that people with disabilities face issues that are unique to that community. For example, ensuring that programs are physically accessible, right? Can persons with disabilities access programs and services? Is the building accessible? Does it have a ramp to and from in the building, right? Accessible parking spots. Does it have an elevator inside? Programmatic access is also important, right? Is the program accessible to anybody? Is communication accessible, right? Do they have the ability to provide communication access to somebody who is, for example, uses sign language as their means of communication, right? Do they have access to sign language interpreters? If they have consumers who they serve that are blind and use Braille to communicate, do they have access to Braille? It was good to hear that perspective, to bring in the disability perspective and remind our communities of the importance of access to services.
Nice. And so you touched on Andy, who was one of the presenters, but we had quite a few presenters at the conference and quite a few dignitaries too that attended. Do you want to highlight some of the presenters and dignitaries and maybe also give a little excerpt on the panel that happened? That was so intriguing.
Absolutely. So I'll start with the panel. So this year we wanted to ensure that we had a discussion on equity, right? Equity from multiple lenses. We wanted to ensure that equity is baked into the process. I love that statement, baking equity into the process. I believe it was Honorable Cheryl Brown who used that statement, and we wanted to focus on equity this year. So we had a panel of experts participate. Andy Imparato brought the disability lens to the conversation. We had Lorena Chandler with Inland Empire Health Plan, who brought the healthcare health plan perspective. We also had Dr. Donna Benton with the Caregiver Coalitions for California. She brought the caregiver perspective. And then we also had Vigo Saborio with the SCAN Foundation, who brought the older adult lens to the conference. So the panel was moderated by me, and I asked them a few questions about equity and what does that mean in their perspective, in their field, and how do we ensure equity. And many of them have experience working with the California Master Plan for Aging, so they brought that perspective. It was just a phenomenal experience bringing those panelists who are subject matter experts in their field to contribute to the discussion on equity. Regarding our elected officials, we were once again very fortunate to get support from elected officials. And as I mentioned at the conference, participation, engagement of elected officials is part of this process. It's not we didn't invite them just as a nice thing to have them provide a welcome, but we want them engaged in the process because we need their support. We need them to implement these policies once we finish the master plan for aging. We need their support in order for us to continue moving things along. We need their support as they share the master plan for aging through their circles and their board of supervisors and the assembly and amongst the senators and things like that. And so it was nice to see again assembly majority leader emerita Eloise Gomez Reyes, who was once again back with us for her third conference with us. This is the third time that she's been with us, supporting us since the beginning, and she brings this great experience and passion for the communities that we're focused on. So we appreciate her participation. We also had two Board of Supervisors this year participate. We had Supervisor Joe Baca from the 5th District for San Bernardino County. We also had Supervisor Karen Spiegel from Riverside County from the 2nd District. So having them participate and stay for part of the event and be a part of it was phenomenal. We need their support. And so great welcome messages from all of them. And of course, we had a phenomenal statewide context panel also with the Honorable Cheryl Brown. She was the chair of the California Commission on Aging. She spoke with Sarah Steenhausen, who's the deputy director of the California Department of Aging, who has been instrumental in the California Master Plan for Aging. And then last, Dr. Nina Wheeler-Harwell. She's the Associate State Director for AARP. Really gave us a statewide context and how we can learn from their experience in developing our own local master plan for aging. So I really appreciate not only the local support, but the statewide support that we received from some of these presenters.
It was really wonderful, the order in which they presented, because we got to see how all of the elements integrate, the state with AARP, with disability. It was neat to see how everything integrates together and with the Inland Empire. So both of you are also part of working groups, and there were some presentations in the second half of the conference from the working groups about their pathways for the master plan. So maybe Carmen can tell us a little about the working group that she participated in and give a brief summary of some of the talking points and highlights. I don't think your audio is working, Carmen.
Sorry. We have the chairs of each of our working groups present the objectives for each domain. And just to remind everybody, we have 4 domains we are working on: transportation, housing, caregiving and all other dementias, as well as behavioral health and social supports. And so I think it was a great opportunity for us to show other professionals and the community how hard we've been working since February on developing our objectives, but that we're all working together. So each work group we made sure had representation from both San Bernardino County and Riverside County. And so this was our chance to, show them what we've come up with. And so I participated in the work group that focuses on caregiving, Alzheimer's, and all other dementias. And so specifically, we have developed 3 different strategies. One focusing on long-term care, the second focusing on caregiver support, and then the third on Alzheimer's disease and all other dementias. And so for long-term care, our focus was on making sure that we are educating both the community and providers about long-term care choices. It's important for us to empower caregivers, older adults, adults with disabilities, by informing them of the options that are available when it comes to long-term care. But also informing providers about these different options. And so when we're talking about long-term care, we're talking about adult daycare centers, programs such as MSSP, in-home supportive services. We're talking about caregiver supports. All of these different programs and services encompass long-term care. It's important for all of us to be informed of them, because as we age, we're going to be needing these services. And so it really focused on awareness to the community and also to the providers, and on us creating a sustainable platform that could help individuals get connected to the different resources in the Inland Empire. When it comes to caregiver support, we talked about how a lot of times we don't see ourselves as caregivers. And so really, all of us in some way or form have either provided care or received care at some point, but we don't see ourselves as caregivers. And that could be because of our culture. I'm the Latino community. We take care of our own. It's just part of what we do. So we don't really, say we're caregivers. We're just doing what we're supposed to be doing. And so part of our second objective is informing the community about what caregiving is, so that people can start identifying themselves as caregivers. Because if then you identify yourself as a caregiver, you're more apt to then seek services for yourself as a caregiver. And so it's informing the community about what caregiving is, and then also about the resources available to them. Our third strategy focused on Alzheimer's disease and other dementias, informing the community about what Alzheimer's is, that it is not normal aging, that Alzheimer's is a form of dementia. There are many other forms of dementia, but they're not normal aging. And so there's a lot of misconceptions in the community that because you have memory loss, that's normal. Yes, as we age, our memory changes, but there are different symptoms that would make it Alzheimer's and not just regular memory loss. And so that our objective for Alzheimer's and other dementia is informing the community on that, but doing so on an early stage so that people can get diagnosed a lot sooner, and also so that they can start implementing preventative health. So that was just for caregiving and other dementia. Dr. Howdegi, he presented on housing, and maybe he can share a little bit about what housing objectives are.
Sure. So I had the pleasure of presenting with my co-committee chair, Tanya Torno. She's the Deputy Director of the Continuum of Care for the Riverside County Housing and Workforce Solutions. And we talked about housing when it comes to not only housing in general, access to housing, but how do we support people living in the community. And so Tanya talked a little bit about access to housing, access to affordable housing, not only for folks needing housing, but those transitioning from homelessness, those transitioning from long-term care facilities to housing. And then I talked a little bit about how do we support folks once they have housing. It's important to provide some support. Some folks, as we age or because of a condition, limitation, disability, and caregiver needs, may need support in the home. And so how do we promote long-term service and supports, those services that are social in nature, maybe work in tandem with medical services to support those that need assistance in the home, right, with activities of daily living, caregivers that maybe need support to avoid burnout. How do we ensure those things are in place? And so we talked a little bit about that. And we talked a little bit about starting at home, right? It's important to provide services at home in the community as opposed to moving in the other direction of higher care facilities or higher costing institutional care and things like that. But it was very well received, and a lot of folks in the room, it resonated with them, right? That most folks want to age in place. Most folks want to be in their home, in their community with loved ones, surrounded by friends and in the community as opposed to institutional care. So, how do we move in that direction? How do we continue? And the last objective was to talk about how do we all work together to ensure that we know what's available, what are the resources out there, how do we leverage each other's resources. It was amazing to see folks connecting in the audience because this organization can work with that organization and they both can leverage each other's resources to help and support people. The caregiver organizations, we're learning about other caregiver support organizations. The older adult groups were meeting other folks that were servicing, and maybe they didn't know about that organization and what services they provided. And going forward, one of our goals is to mobilize and unite these people. How do we make sure that all of us, are in the same room, talking amongst each other, working with each other, maybe developing memorandums of understanding and continue that work. So we at the ICA, I believe one of the things that we can bring to this Inland Empire is to really be a convener of these folks, right? How do we support them in connecting and in supporting our communities? And I think that's one area where we can definitely support all of our coalition members is by helping them, bringing them together so that dialogue is happening, so connections are happening. And so we're all working together to ensure that we can all age well in the Inland Empire.
So what's really unique about the Inland Coalition on Aging is it doesn't just focus on aging and caregiving and helping those with disabilities, but it also focuses on bringing in communication across sectors. So communication amongst those in transportation and in housing who may not normally be communicating with those who are focusing on aging, disability, and caregiving. So we had a lot of presenters and attendees from many different fields. And I was curious, what did you learn from the presenters or just from interacting with people from many different sectors that you didn't already know that you think you can carry into this work that you're continuing to do? Carmen,
There I go again. What was most impactful to me from the beginning of the conference is when our presenters shared personal experience. And so I believe the first to do that was our first speaker who welcomed us, Jared, the CEO of IE-HP, and he shared a personal story about his mother, who is, he's having to have that difficult conversation with her about not driving, right? And I think that impacted everyone because here you see someone who's a CEO of a huge organization, and he's facing what a lot of the challenges that the people that we serve are facing. And so it makes that connection that it's all of us. We are all aging. So it's not just organizations that provide services, and they're not separate. It's the same. And when we face these challenges ourselves, that's when we kind of see like, oh, wow, right? And so, Jared shared, I also shared my own personal experience with caregiving. I cared for my mom, my dad, my sister, and I care for my son who has autism and cerebral palsy. And so aging includes all of us. And we also heard stories from Dr. Benton. We also heard stories from Dr. Belford Saldana, when she spoke about her mom and the technical issues she has, with technology and how important it is for us to connect individuals who may not have, easy access to technology. And so all of these examples, highlighted the fact that we're all aging. And so we're not just doing this for the community, we're also doing this for ourselves. And so if I learned anything is that we are all in the same boat together. And it is important for us to work together, work alongside each other, to find solutions to some of these challenges and barriers that we have here in the Inland Empire. That's how we're going to be able to not just create the plan for aging, but to implement it, right? So right now we're putting our ideas together on what we need to do, but the next step is going to involve every one of us, and that's to implement a successful Inland Empire Master Plan for Aging.
Nice. And what about you,
I
Ben?
agree, Carmen. I enjoyed hearing the personal stories from everybody, and we all have a story to share about our parents, grandparents, and even our own experience as caregivers. And it was really refreshing to hear everybody connect in that way. One of the things that stood out to me was during the equity conversation was a conversation about how do we have this conversation on equity? How do we ensure we're addressing these things without addressing some of the root cause of those things? And how do we bring in the folks who are part of the civil rights movement? How do we bring in folks who are addressing racism? How do we bring in those folks that are addressing all the isms like ageism also and ableism? You know, these are things that are affecting us. They're affecting our ability to do the work that we do. And if we don't address those things, if we don't bake it into our process, we're missing something big. And that's something new that I knew equity was an important topic. And maybe I wasn't calling it racism and ageism and ableism, but that's what it boils down to, right? We have to look at the root cause of some of these things and bring in those folks. Make sure we're bringing in those folks who are already doing that work, who can give us that perspective. And I think we're definitely going to see a different conversation going forward as we continue that discussion on equity, making sure that everybody can access services equally so we can all age well. So, Elizabeth, I have a question for you. Mm-hmm. You have been an integral piece to this. And at first, I just want to pause there for a second to really thank you, Elizabeth. You have been a phenomenal part of our coalition, not only our coalition, not only assisting the coalition and the board and helping us to plan and develop questions and work with the focus groups, but instrumental in developing the plan from the beginning. And so I just want to call that out, that you have been very instrumental. We really appreciate the consultation that you've provided to us working for the Inland Coalition on Aging as a consultant. Amazing, amazing work, and we couldn't have done this without you. But you know, you've been an attendee to the conference, you've been an evaluator who's conducted the focus groups, you've talked to these folks, older adults, adults with disabilities, caregivers, in the development of this master plan and the aging needs and the strategy and all these things. What is the strategy or domain that stood out to you while you were helping to address the specific needs addressed by the focus groups?
Thank you so much for the kind words, Ben. It's very nice. I think as an attendee, so I got to present last year. It was neat to be in a different boat this year and to listen to all of the work that's been done. But as an attendee and somebody who has spoken directly with a lot of the aging individuals that we did focus groups with, and those who are disabled as well, and also caregivers, the strategy that stood out to me the most is kind of woven through all of the domains that we're focusing on, and it's building awareness of existing resources. I think it's really important to start out with what existing resources we have and to build on that, to train agencies and providers and community members on those resources and how to use them. And then hopefully funding can continue to go towards those resources and support them so they don't go away. And then also to fund the increased usage, hopefully. And then in a more strategic sense, once people are using those resources, then we can more fully work on filling those gaps and where those resources aren't covering. But I think making people aware of the resources that are available and showing them how to use it or how to use, whether it be the transportation network that we have or how to access some of the housing wait list and how to navigate housing or how to access behavioral health or caregiving support resources or Alzheimer's and dementia resources, just how to get those and the fact that they exist and how to use them regularly, I think will be really useful and helpful for the general public and the community that we're we're engaging with. So that stood out to me the most, and it showed itself in every single working group presentation and in some of the various other talks that we had. Yeah. And so this next question is for both Carmen and Ben. Let's talk about key takeaways. So let's see if we can summarize key takeaway in like 2 or 3 sentences from this whole conference, and maybe paint a pathway for where we're going next too. So Carmen, what's your key takeaway?
It goes back to the equity discussion. And I don't remember if Andy said this or if it was Dr. Donna Benton. The importance of us uniting the older adults with disabilities, and caregivers in a movement, right? Adults with disabilities, were very successful in getting their voices heard. They're advocates, and also older adults, and also caregivers. But the importance of unifying the 3 groups to make their voices heard even louder, right? Because there's a lot of intersectionality amongst the 3, and a lot of issues affect all 3. And so that's what I like about our plan, right? That we're incorporating the 3 groups and elevating the 3 groups, empowering the 3 groups to continue advocating, because that is how we're going to make things change. So I had that as one takeaway. And then secondly, just the momentum. Seeing everybody be so excited about networking when we had our networking breaks, or even during lunch, talking to one another, and some of the conversations that I heard of working together. We have a lot of people that are really excited about what we're doing, and so we need to keep the momentum going, right? We need to make sure that through the Inland Coalition on Aging, this is the vehicle to make this happen. And so, I encourage people to attend our monthly Inland Coalition on Aging meetings. And I also encourage people to provide us feedback on what we've been developing. And so, we're going to be posting our list of activities, recommendations, and objectives on our website soon. And so we encourage professionals and stakeholders to let us know if we're on the right track, and also to give us suggestions. So we need to keep the momentum going.
I agree, Carmen. Absolutely, Elizabeth. I think my key takeaway is the same. I did take a lot away from the personal stories that we got from the elected officials, from the welcoming comments, from Jared's comments. I took a little bit away from the panel on equity and the civil rights movement. I took a little bit away from the statewide context and what they did and what succeeded and how we can implement it. And I also took some notes on our subcommittees and what they did and how they gathered input and what they're working on and their focus. But something that stood out to me was the passion and commitment from these folks. It was so remarkable, so exciting to see people excited about the work that we're doing, that they did see the connection between older adults and people with disabilities and caregivers. I mean, the power that is there is just unbelievable when we work together. And if we leverage each other's resources, everybody's knowledge, experience, expertise, passion, commitment, and connections, I think we can definitely do some great work together to ensure that people can age well. So I'm excited to. I'm excited about the uniting and mobilizing these groups. Right, we're just at the beginning stages. We haven't even started, even though this has been phenomenal experience. I still feel like, wow, we're just getting started. We're just getting started. This is, I'm just starting to run now and away with everything that we learned, everything that we gained, and continue to engage with these people. I collected some business cards, and these folks are wanting to be a part of the stakeholder groups. They're wanting to be part of the committees. They have something to share. I said, please join us. Don't tell me, tell the group, tell everybody so we can capture what you're telling me right now. So I think harnessing the dynamic power that we have amongst both the Inland Empire. That's another thing, bringing both Riverside and San Diego County together. I think people are starting to see why there's power there. When we go back and say we need better transportation, it's better to look at the region, because funding for transportation, guess what, comes from the state. And so if we're working in silos separately, trying to get transportation for just one county or the other, I think we're failing to see the connections between the two counties. There's definitely money that can be drawn down for both counties. The assembly members, the senators represent both counties in some instances. And so I think people are starting to see the connection with both. And our services are so integrated. You know, we have folks traveling from Riverside County over to Loma Linda Hospital, for example. We need to make sure there's interconnectivity, right? We have folks in the Joshua Tree area traveling over to Riverside County for the Palm Springs, Coachella Valley services. And so we are connected. We are the Inland Empire. And I'm just excited to see the passion, the excitement, and again, we're just starting. But I'm excited about uniting and mobilizing the community.
Nice. Thank you both, Ben and Carmen, for giving an overview of this conference, and we look forward to having you on future live streams. Bye, y'all. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.